Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. I am Kevin Hoare, won't be cry bullied by Hollyweird. And I am here with Sonny Danforth, who is making the point that Trump won it all. And he certainly did. Sonny, great to be back with you. We've had a bit of a rough waters trying to keep up with the show here during campaign time, but it's great to be back on, and it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you too. And you know what? It's a busy time. It's a busy time for those of us that are involved in politics and in more ways than one. And I know you have been very, very busy. So it's great to have you. We were hoping you could be Wednesday, but here we are. And I had told the audience that you might be with me tonight. So I'm so glad that you are. And hey, it's Fabulous Friday.
It is, and it's even more fabulous, sir, given all the news that we have to report. I think that on Wednesday, the dust was still settling on a lot of stuff, but we did know about the presidential race, obviously. And now we're watching what's happening first at the Senate, which looks in pretty good shape, and now with the House. It's unfortunate to report that Monique Despain didn't pull this one out. The AP declared the race, and Lori Chavez Dreamer actually also fell short, very close, but short, 10,000 votes. We're talking about, 380, 400,000 votes in these
Yeah.
districts, in districts 4, 5, and 6. And Lori fell short by 10,000 votes, just shy of 10,000 votes. Monique, about 27,000 votes,
Mhm.
still very small, and I think it was about 17,000 votes, something in that neighborhood for Mike Erickson. And it's a pity because that's not a lot of votes to change the outcome of several congressional races. But Oregon, and before I fixed it, or you can see my hat says "Make Oregon Great Again." It was backwards, and we figured out how to adjust the settings. But I'm like, maybe it's appropriate that Oregon's a little backwards because we went the opposite direction of the rest of the country. But having said that, hats off to our candidates that fought the good fight.
Yes.
You sacrifice at least a year of your life, and you spend all of your time doing this. There's no, you know spend part-time running for Congress. It doesn't exist. And I can bear witness personally to the team that Monique Despain had going, which she put together, raised money, fought hard, in some respects was just outgunned like 3-1 in terms of money, but had really important support at the national level, and drove the debate. Unfortunately, and this is really also something we saw across the country, Democrats could not sell what they
No.
stood for or what they accomplished. So what did they do? Well, they do what Democrats are really good at doing. They lied.
They
Uh,
lie and they lie big.
they tell Joseph Goebbels size lies. He's famous, right? He's the Nazi minister of public relations during Hitler in Germany, and he said, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big lie, because people will be in disbelief that it's not true when you go so big and go so extreme with the lie. Well, this is what they've done across the country, and
Yeah.
no exception in the fourth district. They went and they said, well, Republicans are trying to ban abortion at the federal level. And
Yeah.
you literally have the candidate themselves, and in case Monique saying, I'm not doing that. Okay. Not
Yeah.
running on that. It's a state issue. There was a decision by the Supreme Court in 2022, which was a big decision, the Dobbs decision, which took it away from the courts, which had sat on it because of Roe versus Wade for 50 years, and put it to the states. And that's where we see in the cauldrons of democracy, uh, different states having different standards, different regulations they want to apply. Some are very are strict. Others are very, very liberal, like in Oregon, and we have the most liberal abortion laws in the world,
Yeah.
actually, in Oregon. And not that
Sadly,
doesn't.
yes.
That's right, and that doesn't suit every state. Well, Monique Despain said she would not uh, support a federal ban. Now, this was just an issue that Democrats are using to beat up Republicans. It's a silly issue because in Oregon, state law already has put in effect what Roe versus Wade is in state law. So when somebody's doing that as a scare tactic, and it's because Democrats they found this nationwide. So did Kamala Harris, right? They couldn't run on what they've done to the border and the national security crisis they've created there. They couldn't run on what they're doing to stop fentanyl from getting into our communities. They couldn't run on um, peace around the world. There's multiple wars going on,
Yeah.
all on Joe Biden, Kamala Harris's watch. They couldn't run on the economy. People were very unhappy with it. They hated inflation and they feel like it's become unaffordable. So they couldn't run on any of the things that were the top issues that people had. So in some states, in some districts, they tried to do the old switcheroo and change the subject to abortion. And then one other thing they did, this is true in the fourth district, they did it in other places. Sometimes they just ran against Trump, right? They just, tried, MAGA Republicans, and that worked in some, unfortunately, in some districts. The other thing they did is they pretended to be for law enforcement. They pretended to be for securing the border. They ran videos of them walking around in front of the Trump wall on the southern border, or talking about how much they cared about securing the southern border, and claiming that this bogus bipartisan Senate bill that literally had one Republican supporting it, the guy who co-wrote it, James Langford. Everyone else is against it. 8 Democrats voted against it, but they kept claiming that they were for border security. They aren't. They weren't. They still aren't. And so this is a phenomenon we saw across the country. And here's the difference between Oregon and the rest of the country. In the rest of the country, it really didn't work. It didn't work for Kamala Harris, and it didn't work for a whole range of offices that people were competing for, mostly in swing states and in red states where Democrats are clinging to an office someplace and they got knocked out. But it worked in Oregon, unfortunately, and they spent millions of dollars doing it. So there's a reckoning to come for this. There's just never enough money. But one thing we can say, we can bask in the glow of a few things. And I know I'm sort of blabbering on here because
You're fine.
I didn't have a chance to share it on Wednesday, and it's all pent up now. But winning the presidency, sweeping the swing states, which is just an unbelievable accomplishment. Even
Yes.
coming close in Tim Walz's home state
He
is,
won Tim Walz's county.
yeah, I know. Maybe they've just owned that guy finally, like they should. He was a bipartisan phony from way back,
Yeah.
and but we also have won the Senate and maybe pulled off a few extra seats. I don't know. I haven't checked where Nevada is. That's one of the states that wasn't resolved yet, but we won Pennsylvania in addition to Ohio. Um, and I think Michigan is the other one that was really tight right now.
I believe they have called all the swing states for Trump now.
Oh yeah, presidential thing is done. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the Senate was the
But
one
the
that had a
Senate,
few
yeah.
hang there. And then the House, I've been watching very closely because, to be honest, I mean, not only was I working with Monique on her campaign, and part of our, strong motivation was to make sure that we, if you're going to have President Trump and you want his policies, you need a Republican House.
Yeah.
And what we saw when Nancy Pelosi was Speaker was impeachment, obstruction, investigations, but not securing the border. They literally fought him on securing the border. So I've been watching that, and I'm literally refreshing it right now on my screen. Republicans are at 211 seats. They've flipped 3 seats. Democrats are at 200. I believe they flipped 2 seats. And unfortunately, one of those is Lori Chavez Dreamers.
Oh,
Um,
that's a
but
huge loss.
it is a huge loss, and we're that's why the battle's never done. But when we're watching to see what the final score is here, it's looking pretty good for Republicans. They need to get to 218. Uh, to get to 218, they need 7 more seats. There are 4 seats that are not yet called, 2 in Arizona and 2 in California, that are narrowly, but Republicans are narrowly ahead. That would get them to 215.
Hmm.
There's 4 seats, one in California, one in Ohio, one in Maine, and one in Maryland that are also very close, but leaning towards the Democrat. I mean, to give you an idea, the one in California, California 47, the Democrat is ahead 50.2% to 49.8%. That's super, super close. Um, Ohio 9, which is like Toledo and that um, northwest corner of Ohio, that's 48.1% to 47.8%. That's 0.3%. Maine, um, Maine 2 is 50% for the Democrat, 49.7% for the Republican. So just narrowly, narrowly close. It looks like they've just called Nebraska 2, so that is now in the hands of Republicans, and that one was. So they're watching this. There's a bunch of seats that haven't been called, but I think are going to go to Republicans. So one of them is Alaska. Alaska only has one congressional district, and they used ranked choice voting, which very, very fortunately was soundly defeated here in Oregon. Because I was worried about
Thank
that one. But
goodness.
thank goodness, because I had to deal with ranked choice voting in Portland. It took me 2 hours, and I was able to use the voter database to look up what party affiliations were and backgrounds were of the people running. But there are like 30 candidates for each of those offices, and you had to choose 6.
How
And
many pages was your ballot?
so, so the ranked choice voting local stuff added 2 additional pages to a 4-page ballot, and so the 6 pages in total. But
Wow.
the two for 2 offices, it took literally an hour of looking up stuff that regular people don't have access to.
Okay,
Just
so let's talk about that a minute because
Yeah,
on the ranked choice voting that you did, it had no partisan information, correct? That's why you
it's a
needed to.
nonpartisan office. That's right. And if you went into the voters pamphlet,
Mhm.
a whole bunch of the people there didn't submit a voters pamphlet. And
Yeah, it
so
costs a lot of money.
I looked up the people who did, and of the 7 people out of like 30
Mhm.
that submitted voters pamphlets for mayor, 6 of them were Democrats. Only one of them was worth a damn, and it doesn't look like he won. Rene Gonzalez actually is a great candidate.
Yeah.
Some guy named Keith Wilson looks like he's ahead, who I've seen information from. He actually did spend money and ran a campaign, but I actually think it's possible to win some of these seats without spending any money because there's literally no information about the candidates. And then for city council, you had 30 people running. You had to rank 6, and 3 people could win, not just one, 3. And the third place person could actually get less than 20% and still win. So it's it's a bad system. It's a confusing system. It doesn't help people understand what they're voting on, and by the way, it can only be counted by machines
Right. Right.
because it uses this complex recalculation thing if somebody doesn't win the first time around, the first go around, like who got first, right? If you don't get enough first uh, place votes, then they go to who they drop the lowest candidate, reallocate those votes, and see who got them from there, and you end up with a bass backward system that
Yeah.
can produce confusing outcomes. That's what happened in Alaska 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Sarah Palin was on the ballot. She was competing against Mary Patola, I think is her name, and in a state that is handily won by Republicans in the presidential race, usually 60-70% of the vote. Um, Ranked choice voting delivered a Democrat in the only state. It's a statewide congressional seat. So this Democrat was in Congress for 2 years. Well, it looks like she is going down to defeat narrowly, but still defeat. It's 49.5% to 45.4%. The Republicans ahead. They just haven't called it yet.
I
And
hope the
so
Democrat loses there. I pray it does.
I think that if we pull that one out, and then there's a number of other seats that are just being like Washington District 4, the Republican Newhouse is ahead, but he's against another Republican, so that's kind of irrelevant. That's interesting. That's another state that's messed with their system, so they have the top two finisher thing. Um, it is odds are in favor of Republicans to keep the House, and so if you have the Senate, you have the House, and the presidency, you can do a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I'll have something, it's sad that we didn't
Yes,
and
Murkowski is
then
from
let's
Alaska,
talk
Lori.
about what?
Lori was asking if Murkowski is from Alaska, and the answer is yes. And she squeaked through using this. They literally put ranked choice voting in place in Alaska to save her butt in 2022, and it worked. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
I will tell you, and now the ranked choice voting bill that they voted on, I hope it is failing in Alaska. Do you know? Because they were voting it out this election.
I have not heard somebody ask me that, and it was on the ballot to decide whether they wanted to keep that system. That's correct.
Yeah.
Don't
So,
know. Alaska, I'm just going to do a quick ranked choice voting repeal. Let's see what the status of it is. Effort to repeal ranked choice voting still holds a narrow lead. And that's with 97% of the vote in. Let me see what it says here if I go to it. Now, this is from November 6th. So it's a little couple days old, but it said Wednesday. It said ballot measure two ahead. By 4,289 votes out of 256,000 cast. That's a margin of less than 2 percentage points. Um,
that
so
might trigger a recall,
I'm
to
going through the full
a hand.
results here. So let me see what it says. By the way, um, Uh, President Trump, 55.5%, Harris Waltz, 40.43%. So that just tells you it's a pretty convincingly red state. Um,
Yeah.
it does look like, Begich is doing well, so he's going to pull this off. There were two Democrats in the race, by the way, and some AIP candidate. I don't know. I think it's Alaska Independence Party, got 4%. Anyway, so I'm scrolling down. There's a bunch of state senate things and state house things. This is on the Alaska website. I am very curious because if Oregon defeats ranked choice voting, ballot measure two, here we go. 99.50% of the vote reported. 400 out of 402 precincts have reported. And it says the yes vote to repeal is 125,610. No vote, 121,473. So it's about that same margin that was reported a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, I hope they kill that. That ranked choice voting is just not at all what we want, and I'm so pleased that Oregon has killed that.
Yeah.
But we still have some ballot measures that are close here in Oregon.
Yeah, let me see if
And
I can go to that.
I'm on the Secretary of State's website, and the ranked choice. Oh, it's the independent public service compensation. That's only 7,000 and change votes. It's at a no of 52.83 versus a yes of 47.17%. And so right now it's a no, but as I was reading Brian Boquist's article of today, he says, hey, there's still a lot of ballots out there. They're thinking are going to come back. They're projecting, an 80% return. And right now that we're at a 67.4% return as of right now.
So yeah, the statewide measures, it could make a difference. They have to look, and they don't always know, um, unless you get an updated report on ballots received, which is very hard to get. um, because ballots received versus ballots actually counted or tallied.
Right.
But it looks like that the no vote is prevailing, but in a statewide contest, it could change. In the more local contests, usually you can tell where the ballots are coming from and the likelihood that it will change the outcome. So, Measure 117, that was ranked choice voting, that was defeated 58% to 41%. Measure 118 was a romp of 78% to 21%. And Measure 119, I don't even know if I care about that one, but it was something about cannabis processors and communications and whatever.
I care about it. I'm not in that business, but it made the pot industry force them to negotiate with the union.
Yeah.
And that part, I mean, we were in Umatilla County a no on that because no business should be forced to do that.
No, I
Um,
agree. I actually agree with that. I
yeah,
just think that, you know, got a Lamoda taste in my mouth, to be honest. And
right.
I'm like, well, maybe they kind of deserve it for, allowing bad actors like that to run rampant and hand people bags of cash.
Yeah.
And then, some people are getting away with the fact that they did that. So,
So I'll tell you
not
something
loyal.
interesting. You were talking the ballot return versus ballots counted. So on the Secretary of State's website, it is ballots counted when you look
Right.
at the
So
official.
there's another
Now,
report that you can look at, but they don't refresh it very often. And it,
no, and I have that in my hand because I have been getting that daily. And
mhm.
I'll tell you, it's interesting how numbers shift on there from day to day. Oh my goodness. So, but this report is from 2 days ago with a ballot return of 69.4%.
That's
So,
right. Yeah.
yeah,
That's the problem is now
yeah,
that's now so it's 69.4%. They're not going to get to 100%, but they are going to get to a higher number than 69.4%. It's probably going to be in the 80s someplace, like low 80s, right?
they're guessing, they're speculating 80% return.
Right.
Yeah,
69.4%, 80%. All right. So
yeah,
that's another 11%. What they usually assume in a particular locale, like if you're in like Lane County, for instance, they kind of assume that the ballots that have come in aren't going to differ that much from the ballots that still have yet to come in. They could, but it's usually very, very unlikely
yeah,
that it does, um, unless you have ballots that were not coming in from people in a specific location
yeah.
and that location happened to be tilted one way or the other heavily, and that's generally not the case at all. But when you're talking about statewide, unless you know what ballots have been received but not reported yet, not tallied and counted, if those ballots are mostly coming from Multnomah County, then that could be a very different result than if those ballots are mostly coming from Josephine County.
Right. Right. Hey, in this, I'm going to post a report that's out of OPB today, and I got it from the Oregon Watchdog. But this article, it says the headline of the article is "A Big Night for Republicans Nationally, but Not in Oregon." So it's kind of ominous, right? But I want to tell you, I found some good information in here because even in Oregon has been a shift to the right. And in that, so I counted up, they have a graph. I'll just show you this graph right here.
Hmm.
And 23 counties shifted to the right in Oregon. And I have to
They
tell you,
became
number
redder.
one, pardon?
They became redder.
Redder, yes. And Jefferson County is plus 9% redder. My county, Umatilla County, is plus 6%. So the top four well, I'll say five, was Jefferson County at plus 9, Umatilla at plus 6, Morrow County at plus 5, Lake and Columbia, both of those were tied at plus 4. And there were five counties, so 23 counties turned plus 1 to plus 2, plus 3, redder. Five counties stayed neutral, and eight counties actually lost ground and went plus in the side of Democrats, plus blue.
Right. And
And
and we and of those 8 counties, 6 of them tend to be the ones that Democrats win and rely on heavily. I think we can name them in it's Marion, Washington, Lane, Lincoln, Benton, Hood River, and some I've seen Clatsop show up on a couple of election results as being bluish. That's and Deschutes.
yeah, but I'll tell you, Marion wasn't on here. Marion
No, Marion's
was,
Republican leaning.
yeah, on Republican, absolutely. If Marion was plus 3 in the Republican side.
Yeah,
And so, but so that actually, that's a good thing that 23 counties went more red. It's a little bit, you
I think the
know?
problem is it's offset by the giant counties, the population centers that became more blue. And, the phenomena that led to President Trump sweeping the swing states, they had a strategy. They said they were going to make the red cities redder. They were going to make um, the swing cities light red,
Mhm.
and the areas of the states they were trying to win that were blue, they made them light blue
Yeah.
by pushing greater turnout of conservative Republicans in those areas, or getting people to sympathize with that message. So what you're describing here fits with the 23 counties. The Democrats, on the other hand, had sort of the converse strategy. They tried to drive Democrat turnout, and that worked great in blue states. It did not work well in swing states.
No.
Um, you know,
So to answer Lori's question, she said Deschutes blue. I thought they were red. Well,
no,
Deschutes in this election went 2% more blue.
it did, and that county. You wind the clock back 15 years ago, it was considered a Republican county.
Hmm.
Um, by 2020, it was a pretty it had become a solid light blue county, and it's heading in the direction of becoming no different than Washington or Multnomah counties, unfortunately. Lane County, on the other hand, has been sort of it swung back and forth a little bit depending on the election cycle. I think in this election cycle, um, it became more blue.
No,
But
it's a +1 to the Republicans.
okay, that's good. That's
So
really
that's
good.
really good at this election cycle.
But it's right. It's sort of become a swing in
Yeah,
that regard. Well,
yeah,
Deschutes is not. Deschutes is traveling directly towards
yeah.
blue territory, and so Senator Tim Knopp, who held the seat there for solidly for many years, was his the person who ran in his place this time because, of
Mhm.
course, he was affected by um, the walkout decision of the courts saying that that changed
Yeah.
the Constitution would stand. Well, um, his seat he won it by like 500 votes or something or 1,000 votes 4 years ago, reelect, and he's a well liked, well known incumbent. Um, Now that seat was totally upside down. It's the Democrat romped in that seat, and unfortunately, um, gave a Senate seat over to the Democrats. And that's
Now
right.
we
Lots of Californians retiring there, among
Yeah,
others, Lori.
yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah, yeah. Now Alex Scarlatos won. And what other wins do we know about? That's the only one. I haven't really analyzed a lot of Oregon. I've looked at the our statewide, which is horrible. We didn't win a one of those,
Well,
not even
Brian
close.
Boquist came kind of close, but if you look, it was because the margin that the other statewides had, uh, his his was closer because there was a Pacific Green Working Families candidate competing with Elizabeth Steiner.
Yeah,
And so that one was sort of distorted a little bit because somebody took votes away from Elizabeth Steiner, and she's a terrible candidate. She's going to be an even worse office holder. She doesn't know anything about finance or the Treasury, nothing. Um, but that's not it's just like um, upholding the law is not a qualification for somebody running for attorney general when you're a Democrat either.
yeah,
But when you drill down to the state representative level, the only one that I saw that looked like it was still pretty close as when I last checked was Jeff Helfrich, which is District 52.
hmm,
Pretty much all the other results were distinct in one direction or the other. Like Kevin Mannix held on to his seat pretty
yeah,
handily, and that was one of the closer ones. I think Tracy Kramer won in her seat. Um, but Jeff has had a very set of very close. Cyrus Javadi in the 32nd district out in Clatsop, he won. Um, but it wasn't a romp. It was 52-48 basically. Um, as I scan down here, um, I don't think we lost ground, and the only one that was up in the air was Jeff's. So I'm just trying to get to that one. It's way here at the end of the list. Um, well, there was a close race in East County, Multnomah. John Masterman fell short. He lost 52.5 to 47.17 to uh, Hoa Nguyen, Democrat Independent Working Families Party. He worked really hard, just didn't get it. Um, Jeff Helford. So Jeff has won. It looks like 51.7 to 48.15. So kind of close, but he is the House Minority Leader for the Republicans.
yeah. Well, I did see some analysis that we're in Oregon, we're like right next door to being a super minority again.
Yeah.
Um,
The Senate, I think because of
yeah,
the
I
seat
think
we
it was
lost in
the
the
Senate.
Senate, we are in the super minority there, but we are not in the super minority in the House. We did manage to, I believe, stay out of that. So it's something. But there are a lot of things wrong in Oregon. And the one thing that didn't happen this time, for a number of reasons, is people didn't vote to change anything uh, in the legislature. So if you're unhappy, you might want to think of voting in the next election for a different person. Because if you just vote for what you're getting, which is
Yeah.
Democrats, if you're like, I'm tired of the crime and the fentanyl, I'm going to vote Democrat. It's like, actually, you're going to get crime and fentanyl. That's what you're going to get. And
Right, right,
you should stop
exactly.
your bitching because it's really your fault. Okay.
Yeah.
Vote different. And the heartbreaker had to be Will Lathrop. And we know he
Oh, yeah,
worked, he campaigned for 2 years. He's not
he
a
did.
career politician at all. He worked really hard at it. He was competing with a bozo who, Rayfield, who actually served time, I believe. And um,
Mm.
it's disappointing because people do say that they wish that we would enforce the law, and then they vote for Dan Rayfield.
Right, they don't vote for the one that will, you
Yeah,
know?
and Will Lathrop, fabulous candidate, actually has good experience, great message,
Yes,
but we it just shows that there's a lot more work to do in Oregon. Just to shift gears a little bit, Sonny, I think some of the attention has shifted to what's going to happen in DC now. Um, because now the transition is going to start. It already
yes,
has. It's we're not up in the air waiting to see what the result of the presidential race is. And President Trump has already named his chief of staff. And it proves once again that President Trump hates women and thinks that they're
yes.
worthless because he has chosen the very first female chief of staff for a president in U.S. history. Um, so there you go. What else is new, right?
Right, and I'll tell you what is I was thinking about this before we came on as I was looking at stories. There's not gonna be any DEI hires, not a one.
No,
But,
they're going to get rid of
it
it.
is merit-based. Everything Trump does is merit-based,
Yeah.
and so it doesn't matter, gay, straight, pink, brown, purple, doesn't matter, and
Whoever can do the job without stealing luggage uh, is in,
yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly, and so, yeah, there's a lot of people gonna lose their job, and rightfully so, and so I just that, looking forward to having merit-based administration and not what we've had. I do, yeah. So
Well, and I'm
look
by the way,
forward to
Susie
that.
Wiles is the name of the White
Yes,
House chief of staff. She worked as a campaign manager, co-campaign manager in the Trump campaign, and she looks like They say she's tough, smart, innovative, universally admired and respected. Um, and here's a little factoid for you. You know whose daughter she is? You might not recognize the name, but anybody who pays close attention to sports over the recent decades in the United States, an announcer named Pat Summerall,
yes.
really a fabulous guy that was well respected by everyone and just did a good job. Announced football games, basketball, just that's his daughter. So, not a slouch. And there's a great opportunity here to clean out the swamp.
Yes, and she has a lot of experience around politics and for a lot of years and helping a lot of campaigns. And so when he picked her, and I saw her at his acceptance speech, and she's a person who kind of just leave me in the background, let me do my job.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy. I look forward to whatever we see from that. Trump is not and I'll tell you, that just goes against what Mark Cuban said, that Trump
Yeah.
doesn't surround himself with smart, intelligent women. Well, let me tell you, he has eaten crow ever since he said that. It's the guy's got money, but he can't control his mouth for sure.
Well, and I think the Democrats in general found a way to actually insult not only the people they used to just call Republicans. They said clinging to their Bibles and their guns. Actually, they managed to insult almost all Hispanics, and
Yeah.
they managed to insult black men in particular, saying that they were betraying their race. By that just didn't work
Yeah.
because they could all see how much they hated what was going on, and then they got insulted by the people that said, "You owe us your vote." That arrogance, the Democrats paid dearly for. By the way, here's some people who may fill Trump cabinet posts. It looks like Steve Mnuchin, who was in the first Trump administration, um, uh, he might be considered for Treasury Secretary again. He actually look at the economy that was delivered,
Oh,
the low inflation economy that we had. And so he might be in for this. Mike Pompeo, who was Trump's first CIA director and his second Secretary of State,
yeah.
um, played a
I'm not
key role
thrilled
in the
by him
Abraham
at all.
Accords. He might be. He might. I've heard him being considered possibly for Secretary of State or Defense Secretary. And of course, he's a West Point grad, former congressman as well.
Yeah,
So
no,
I've
I'll
heard
tell
him
you, social media is saying no way, no way. Keep Mike Pompeo out. But
out.
Rick
Okay.
Grinnell for Secretary of State, boy,
Well, I
he
think Rick Grinnell and I think Marco Rubio are the two names being floated for Secretary of State. They'd both be great, of course. And then, and really, um, who's it? For no, I heard Pompeo was being considered for Defense Secretary, not Secretary of State.
mm,
But the one being considered, Marco Rubio, has become a real Trump loyalist. He was very close to being selected as a vice presidential nominee as well. And there was a time where they were at odds, and I think they've actually become pretty close. I think people that Trump's trusts need to be the ones he picks because he obviously had a problem in the first administration by picking people that were recommended to him but didn't have the credentials, or they did have the credentials but they didn't have the trust. Here's another guy, Keith Kellogg.
yeah, Cash Patel. I think Cash Patel is a somebody that's going to be on a list. Devin Nunes, Lori's throwing a few names out. Devin is running Donald Trump Media, Trump Media Group. And so I don't think he would be pulled out of that position. That's just my opinion. I think Kevin, something happened to Kevin. I don't know. But here
I
he
don't know.
comes.
I'm here. I was here the whole time. Somehow it deactivated me, but apparently the internet didn't like my Robert Lighthizer mention. Uh, United States, Mexico, Canada free trade agreement, which actually turned out to be a good one.
Your signal is
And
not good. That's what's happening. Your signal is really bad. It looks real bad on my end. So maybe the internet
sorry about
bandwidth
that.
or something. So Lori says,
Yeah.
where does Elon land? Well, he's looking at government efficiency. That's where Trump said he
Yeah.
is going to put him in DOGE,
Which is a
oversight.
department that doesn't exist, but Congress might create it. I could see Trump just creating the Office of Government Efficiency and appointing them, right in the
Yep.
White House, which might be a really powerful thing to do. Um, but yeah, he's going to go in and have something to say about all of these departments. But he's also going to be creative and smart because he's the guy. He didn't just like start SpaceX and then cut budget and keep it cheap. He actually puts people in orbit and brings them back and builds something like the largest rocket of all time, Starship. Um, and he actually does this stuff. NASA can't do this stuff,
No,
and
but
so I trust that he will actually do the right thing and find $2 trillion in savings, which would be historic.
oh, 100%. I mean, look what he did with Twitter. He bought Twitter. He cut out so many people, made it run more efficiently, got rid of all the fat stuff that you would call the pork of government, but the pork of a business. and go, oh no, we're trimming this down and it is humming along and it is trending as the number one source for news. If you want to know, go and hear the truth, you go to X,
Yeah.
and so he doesn't need, having very successful people in positions is a smart thing because they don't need more. They know how to do it. They're problem solvers, and they've already made it. They don't
Yeah.
have something else to prove. And truthfully, there are many, many people that are around Trump that are, I believe, are there to truly do what's in the best interest of our nation, not just themselves.
So
And
there's immigration and security posts. I think we might see Tom Homan and Mark Morgan as a couple of the people
oh
who,
yeah, I want to see Tom Homan back there.
yeah, and Mark
Let
Morgan's
him
pretty
go
good
get
too.
redeemed. He's the guy is. I've heard him speak, and he is so passionate about this. And Trump knows that he's right there, and he's ready, and he knows what to do. That's the guy.
So Stephen Miller, I don't know what role he's going to play in the White House. He's a great advisor, and very smart and articulate, a policy crafter. I don't know what role he'll play, but it will be something. Uh, I think the biggest and most important pick that Trump is going to have is the Department of Justice Attorney General. That one, I would pick that one first. I'd make sure it is somebody who rights that ship, because that place, that Department of Justice, it needs a house cleaning worse than anything else, because all
Yeah,
of it was used as a weapon, and it needs to be turned back into a Department of Justice.
100%.
And Ken Paxton is one of the people they're considering. He's the Texas Attorney General. He has his
He's a rock
detractors.
star.
He is great, but he has his detractors. So you know how this goes in D.C. They're going to leak back and forth. There's going to be all kinds of stuff. And then there's Trump, who makes his own mind up. Tulsi Gabbard looks like she's probably going to be heading for some role. Um, I don't know what role, but a role. I've
So,
heard Lee Stefanik being considered for UN ambassador to the UN, United Nations. Vivek Ramaswamy, obviously, he knows a lot about the business and commerce, and so I could see him being put into one of those roles. He's articulate. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think, could find himself in
huh.
charge of something like the FDA.
Oh yeah,
Um, you
he's
know,
already issued some orders. He's
yes,
put a directive out. He knows where he's going, and I, I like it. I like what I'm seeing, and I want to see the Argentinian President Malay's scene. I frankly want to see Trump do that. Okay, that department we're done. That department we're done. That department
yeah,
we're done.
gone.
Because
This one, gone.
yes,
This one,
gone.
worthless, gone. I think they're going to do a lot of stuff, but they're also going to improve the performance and the efficiency of the things the government is supposed to be doing. And they're going to get the people out of there who've been undermining the government, which is worse than being a failure at accomplishing what you're supposed to do or being a waste of money. Some of them are actually working against America. And I think that's going to be over with. That's why I'm saying the first and most important one is the DOJ, because to get
Yes.
the rest of the people to behave, you need a DOJ that gets it done. By the way, there's a very interesting uh, post election analysis that's been done by, Devin Nunes. You're right. They might bring in Devin Nunes. He'd be great. I would love to see him in charge of maybe the CIA. Cash Patel would be fabulous. I'd put him. I think he should. Maybe he's the Attorney General. Cash Patel. Um,
I think so. I
yeah,
think so.
and then Victor Davis Hanson did a great analysis here, talking about what happened in the election for president.
Mhm.
And he said the rewards and hard work. And he really points out how the problem.
You're freezing up a little, Kevin. He's freezing up. We can't hear you. You're frozen. So there is the beauty of it is Trump has so many to choose from. He's been there now. He knows who the good people are. He has surrounded him by the good people, and so I think that's where what is going to. I'm excited to see who he puts in, and things start happening. Um, One of the things that I wanted to, while we wait for Kevin to come back in, he'll be back, is that so Lori, I saw you ask about where are the 11 million votes, and I want to hear what Kevin has to say, about that because it is such a
I'm back.
disparity. Yes, good. I mean, it's such a disparity of the election this year and what happened 8 years ago and 4 years ago of the Democrat votes. It shows there is a problem that
Well,
they.
I will say that we do have to look at the turnout numbers in what happened in each state, because Oregon is experiencing lower turnout than 2020. The turnout looks like a midterm turnout, which is very unusual, and so we need to look at what that is and where it is to figure out if it's real. My first impression of the number of votes that took place 2020 versus
Mhm.
2024 is 81 million. Looks a lot less real than people assumed it was. Um, and Trump got 74 million, I think,
Yeah.
in 2020. He's coming in at 71 right now, and he's winning the popular vote, which is
Yeah.
a shocker because yes, there is the national popular vote thing that some states have approved. However, it does not get activated until enough states join the national popular vote compact, uh, such that the states committed to it exceed 270 electoral votes. So that hasn't happened yet. What that means is that Oregon has approved the National Popular Vote Compact, but there need to be more states that have signed on to it before Oregon is obligated to do, under its own state law, what that um, compact says, which is in the case of 2024, Oregon would be obligated to take its electoral votes, its 8 electoral votes, and give them to Donald Trump. But they don't have to do that yet because there are not enough states that have signed on to it. Something tells me that based on the 2024 popular vote totals, I don't think they're going to ever get the other states to sign on to it.
I agree. I agree because this is like never happens to win the electoral and the popular vote. This never happens. And
It's
so
been 20 years. The last time a Republican won the popular vote was 2004. It was George W. Bush, and that was after he lost it in 2000. So, but it's been 20 years since a
yeah.
Republican won the popular vote. And before that, the last time a Republican won the popular vote was 1988, George H.W. Bush. Uh, Now, here's the issue. I also think that the national vote, popular vote compact is unconstitutional, that it requires the approval of Congress,
Yeah.
and it will be challenged in the Supreme Court eventually and thrown out because it is interstate compacts do require the approval of Congress under the Constitution, and this one
Hmm.
doesn't have it. It's just states saying we agree with each other. We're going to do something interstate compact, and it's unconstitutional for those states to do that. Um, but we'll see. Um, I do think that the popular vote we have the reason why Trump also won the popular vote is because he did far better than was expected in California and New York. New York was really
Mhm.
close. It was only like 6 or 7% difference. That was double digits in 2020, and just cutting into the margin of loss in California also had that same effect. So, we are probably not going to see anytime soon something like what we saw with Ronald Reagan in 1984, where he won every state in the country except Minnesota, which is where Walter Mondale was from. We're probably not going to see that again for like 50 years. But this is about as close as you're going to get, which is
Mm.
somebody that they thought couldn't win at all.
Yeah,
And if he did win, would win the electoral college, but not the popular vote. Winning the popular vote and the electoral college, it's a sweep.
it
It's a
is.
landslide.
It is, especially then with it's a real sweep getting the Senate and praying that we get the House.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, they have to hit the ground running with the agenda and bam, bam, bam. And the Republicans have got to stick together and make it happen because the people have voted for this in a sweeping majority, truly.
Yeah. And Trump, this is the reason why Trump became the candidate that at first people thought he wasn't conservative or that he was kind of a guy that was a lot of talk. If you go back to 2016, there are a lot of people who thought, hey, he's a TV personality
Yeah.
and a flamboyant TV, but he's not going to do what he said. Well, what happened was he said it. He said it over and over that he meant what he meant, like
Yeah.
we're going to build a border wall, etc. And then he had the audacity to do it, even when they told him they were going to stop him from doing it. And he went ahead and found a way to do it anyway. So here's what he has said. He has said he has no choice but to issue mass deportations of illegal migrants. And you know where I think he's going to start? I think he's going to start with the 650,000 people with criminal records who have been caught and released into the United States after they were known to have criminal records. They were released into the United States awaiting asylum hearings.
Yes.
Those people must leave. And you start with them. Those are murderers, rapists, burglars, sexual assaulters, and they don't belong here. They shouldn't have been let in the first place. Then the next ones you go to, of course, are any. Well, you certainly get terrorists out, right?
Yeah.
Um, we may take a while to find some of these folks because some of them snuck in. We
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
catch. Uh,
It's
and
not
then
going
anyway,
to happen overnight. But
it's not going to happen overnight.
he said we're going to start with those with the criminals. It has
Yeah,
to start with the criminals and the gangs.
and the gangs.
And he did that before. He was deporting the gangs out of the United States before, and that's why Holman is the guy. He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm the guy for this." Absolutely.
Well, and there's going to be a big battle with all the sanctuary states who they are going to have to defund if they don't cooperate, because no sanctuary state should be giving sanctuary to people with criminal records who came into the country. That's simple.
Kevin, I've heard this like, well, we'll just defund those states that in that if they're going to defy. But I'll tell you, the federal government's one job is securing our nation and the sovereignty of our nation and the sovereignty of our borders. And so, in my viewpoint, and I'm by no means a lawyer or a constitutional scholar, but in my viewpoint, a state has no right to harbor an illegal fugitive when that is the federal government's role, period.
So, a sanctuary state, what they do is they simply, under their own state laws, forbid local and state law enforcement from assisting or even making federal law enforcement aware that they have somebody present illegally present in their state, um, and cooperating with, I forget what the term is, but there's a special order that can be released issued calling for somebody to be detained, and then for deportation purposes, and states just ignore that. So it now maybe those laws can be struck down in a lengthy court process, but I don't think that they're going to wait for a couple of years of a lengthy court process. I think what they're going to do is they're going to say, um, you are going to assist us in enforcing federal law, or you are not going to have the funding you rely upon for your state to function.
Yeah.
That is probably the fastest way they can do it. You're right. They're probably doing something illegal, but you know how the courts work. And what the court states will do that want to have sanctuary uh, laws in place is they will sue to block the feds from doing this and compelling them to do it. And then there will be a battle to see if the federal government can defund states uh, legally who refuse to cooperate with federal law enforcement. Now, you can have also enormous numbers of federal law enforcement simply go in and do it themselves directly. And then there's the question about, well, then will somebody be actually aiding and abetting um, criminal illegal aliens
Right.
who have an order for deportation? Will they be shielding them? And so there's
Yeah.
going to be a real battle here. And I would really like to see Tina Kotek here in Oregon and some of these, whoever the next mayor of Portland is, claim that they're going to make sure that the feds cannot deport rapists and murderers that have come into this country and
Yeah.
gang members. I'd love to see them try to expend all their political capital and their money on that because I think they're going to lose that in the eye of public opinion. Not that they wouldn't try.
Yeah. Yeah. So to go to one of the comments, yes, the U of O. You heard about that? A U of O official is on leave now after
Yeah.
telling Trump supporters to jump off a bridge. And I'll tell you, it is, we have to, through social media, particularly X, to bring light. Libs of TikTok, that's where I first saw it. I reposted it, and we all have to do that because that is not acceptable behavior. So
Yeah.
I'm happy that this person is on a leave, and frankly, I hope they lose their job over that because
Well, I hope so too. He's on leave. I think that they put him in a timeout is what they've done, and he's probably he's probably in a special safe space, uh, decompressing, awaiting restoration. Once the whole thing blows over, they'll let him back in. Is what they're going to do. But I just think that we're gonna there's I'm surprised that there haven't been riots and looting and arson in these cities
it might
as a
come.
result of this. I'm surprised. However, the defeat was so um, resounding that maybe the left is afraid now of doing this. But I do believe that they'll try to find something they perceive to be the political moral high ground, and they'll fight back. I think the deportations might be one of the things they're going to try. They're going to try some other things. We are probably going to see a replacement of a Supreme Court justice. My guess is Clarence Thomas
Yep. So
within the next year. And once that happens, all these issues are going to be put on trial again about abortion and every judicial decision he's participated
yeah.
in that's been momentous for the past so many decades. So, and they'll be rioting then. They will.
So, speaking of judges, here is another story from the Epic Times that a federal judge, has struck down a federal rule protecting illegal immigrants married to U.S. citizens. So this was something that Biden wanted, that illegal immigrants that are married to U.S. citizens, just going to give them citizenship, blanket citizenship, and
Yeah,
with their
without
parole
going
in
through
place.
Congress. They did not go through Congress. They're claiming
No.
they have the power and the right to do it.
And so just yesterday, a Texas federal judge struck down the Department of Homeland Security's rule, which is another unelected bureaucratic agency saying, well, we'll make up this rule, right? And
Hmm.
so thank goodness they've done that. And there's going to be more of stopping this nonsense now that Trump has been elected our president. I'm so glad because we don't need, you go through the process. You go through the process. You come through the door. You don't sneak under the, sneak in or anything. And I had another story. Well, another one that has to do with Trump is terrified of RFK Jr., the FDA and the FDA takeover. Pharma executives convene an emergency meeting. And when I read that headline, I laughed because they got to figure out what are we gonna do here, you know? Because yeah,
Yeah,
there
they thought
is.
they controlled the U.S. government.
Yes, they don't. And they're going to find out, I hope, very shortly that they don't control the federal government. Things are
Well,
changing. We're going to be, I think that we're going to be very surprised by some of these things because you see, Trump can't get reelected. But he at the same
he's not
time,
running for reelection. He's done. Yeah.
he doesn't he is a person who does what he says. His words matter and they do mean something. They do have purpose. And he has said there's a lot that he's going to do, and so by golly, I believe that he will be. Um, so yeah.
Well, it's the other, by the way, the other part of the deportation stuff that's going to take place, it'll be more controversial. It's totally legal and logical. Is anybody who has gone through the asylum hearing process and the court verdict is to deny that asylum, they're they're due to be deported right now.
Yeah.
They're done. They got in pending the hearing. The hearing's been held. The decision's been rendered. Done. And and so now it's time to leave because they didn't get it because it was fake. That's what was determined by the court. It was not legitimate. I guarantee you the Democrats are going to wrap themselves around these folks and say they all have to stay here, even though this is the process the Democrats swore they were actually trying to uphold by letting them in the first place.
Right.
And so there's going to be real battles. One thing we have to remember, and this is sort of my concluding thought here tonight. I've talked to a number of folks who feel reassured by what happened nationally, and that's great. I think we obviously have work to do here in Oregon. But whether you're talking about what happened nationally or what's happened here in Oregon, we have a problem as Republicans and conservatives. When we succeed, we we declare victory, and then we go home to our private lives. We roll up the tents. We take down all the flags. We go back to regular life, and we figure, well, now it's time to govern. That is to ignore the fact that the left never sleeps. They always come back. They're planning the next election now. Even while we're waiting for some of the results to be announced, they're planning what they're going to do. They're training their next crop of candidates. They're setting up their nonprofit syndicates. They're shoving in some Soros money. They're planning what in the media, they're already planning what they're going to do. They're not going to stop doing what they were doing. And we can't be arrogant and think that we can just roll over and go to sleep. Um, it is disconcerting to a lot of people that that's how it is. But if you want to lose something as fast or faster than you gained it, then pretend like the world is saved and do nothing. And that's the lesson here. I think we have to redouble our efforts. I think the media is going to give the Democrats an opportunity to get back on the horse and reclaim some sort of mantle of um, like I said, political moral high ground, and we have to watch for what it is. And they are going to riot and they're going to loot. They
Mhm.
are.
Mhm.
They can't do it now because they got a thumping, as Obama would say. Uh, but they're not quitting. They plan to radically transform the country, and they almost did it. Let's remember
Yes.
this: those seven swing states, they weren't won by overwhelming, resounding numbers. Um, they were close. The polling was close all the way to the end, and 1 or 2% shift towards President Trump was enough to win a whole bunch of states. Someone as idiotic as Vice President Giggles almost pulled it off. What are we going to do to make sure that the next generation of Americans can count on freedom and prosperity? What are we going to do?
So, Kevin, that's great. And I'll tell you what we have to do in Oregon, and that is not to go to sleep. As you and I've talked, and you started the fund to do a election conversion in the state of Oregon, an election, a voter conversion, we have to register more people.
Yeah,
Period. We have all these unaffiliated voters, and we have to. So, for example, in my county, Umatilla County, the county turnout is at 40.4%. No, no, no. It's at 62.2% as of the November 6th, the last stats that came from the Secretary of State. And the state average at that time is 69.4. But we have so many in Umatilla County, and every county has got these unaffiliated voters that are not registered with any party. We have so many people that never turn a ballot in. It is about voter education and voter registration. So today, I have to say this, and here is this button. There we go. This button is what's been on my purse for quite a while. All of our PCPs have this, and I put mine on my purse because it goes everywhere. I don't have to pin it on my shirt. My
yeah.
purse goes everywhere with me. And and I was happy to see that Umatilla County was +6 to the red. And this is how, if that's what we have to do. David always said, unless we go and register more voters, we're not going to turn this state around.
And
And
you know
but
that there's some low hanging fruit, which I'm sure you're well aware of in Umatilla County. There are non affiliated voters who voted for Republicans
yes,
and told us they were going to do that. And
yes,
we would be fools not to go out and talk to them and say, we want to invite you in. We want you to be a part of what we're doing. In 2026, we want you to help us decide who the Republican nominee for governor is going to
yeah.
be. You can do that by joining us. And if they do that, that's less work for us to turn people out because they'll turn out at a much higher rate. They'll feel like they're engaged and belong. And then we can focus on the true swing voters, which frankly, there's a bunch of them that don't know what to think and swing back and forth every election. And we need to work on them too. But there will be less resources dedicated to try and turn out people that should turn out anyway.
And so with that, it is all the gun shows. It's all everything, every fair, gun show, anything, anybody can go register people to vote.
Hmm.
Anybody. All it takes is a clipboard and go walk around, the post office. You could set up a little table. There's so many things that people can do, but that's what it takes. And so I had a young man. Well, before I get to that young man, yesterday, a fellow came in our office, and he said, "Well, I'll see you in 4 years." And I said, "No, no, we have elections every year, and Umatilla County Republicans is your where to come to see what we're paying attention to, and have recommendations for you. And it is every year. And so that's when I said voter education, because we have to educate people that every year we have elections. And it is not just presidential elections. It is not just when we're going to elect the governor. It is every single year. And so through voter conversion and voter registration, voter education, that's how we change this state. So some of the super lowest fruit, as we did here in Umatilla County, we went to those people that are registered Republican, actively registered Republican, that never vote or hardly ever vote. And
Yeah.
we went after them and encouraging them to vote, contacting them, giving them a voter recommendation, because a lot of it is people don't know who to vote for or how to vote because they're just busy working 2 or 3 jobs, keeping their nose above water, that they're not paying attention. And then when the ballot comes, so that's
Well, and when 5 measures show up on that ballot and it requires all this research, so like, could somebody I trust tell me what to think about these things so I can have a
yeah,
little bit more guidance and information? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. But amazingly, sometimes we don't do that. We need to help those folks with that. And I see Nicholas saying here that we don't need
right.
Republicans, we need conservatives. Well, I'll tell you, Republicans, that's a party. That's just simply a way to organize people to that are like-minded to accomplish something electorally. Conservative, that's a political and social philosophy that needs to manifest itself in real results. It's fine if you and I are conservative, but it's not fine if we don't do anything about it. And
Mhm.
Republicans are a vehicle for doing something about it that actually can do the number one thing you have to do in elections. You have to get more votes than the other guy. That's it. If you don't do that, people who get 49.99% of the vote and lose to somebody who gets 50.0001% of the vote, you know how what percent of the uh, ability to implement a conservative point of view in our public policy is? It's zero. It's zero. You have to prevail. It means we have to be organized. We have to take practical steps. And yes, you can insist upon the party being conservative, but you also have to insist that you don't be conservative about what you do about it. And I'm not saying being liberal about what you do about it, but by being, don't be reserved and hesitant, taking half measures. You need to go and jump all the way in and find a way to be bold. Bold. Sometimes conservative is used as being the opposite of bold. That's what I'm talking about here. You've got to be bold and courageous. And what better way to do that than to join with like minded people who help guide and train all of us to do this?
Yeah.
I have people I rely upon to help me know what the right thing is to do and how to do it. All of us need that. The party is simply a vehicle for that. When the party doesn't do that, then we have to get in there because it by itself it's also a representative form of governance.
Yes.
You got to get in there and you got to fix it. When it
That's
doesn't
right.
do its job, you got to go and make it do its job.
And by being involved in it is how you affect the change that you want to see in
Yeah.
your party. It is by involvement. I mean, you and I talk this all the time, and help people understand why to be in the party, because then you have a voice in the primary. When you're
Yeah.
registered Republican and you get the Republican ballot, you have a voice in the primary where we pick who we want to advance to the general election.
Yeah.
And so many people just don't get it. But we've the deal is it is about voter conversion, voter registration, and activation, and education. That's how we change. We can have all of the dreams that we want for our state. We can have superb candidates, which we had at the top of the ticket, um, and and still not make it. because we don't have the numbers. The Democrats outnumber the Republicans. And then when you have three or four people run for the same position, it is, and so people are throwing their vote away for, a independent candidate that doesn't have a chance in hell of winning, or a constitutional candidate might be a great person, but they don't have a chance. So I
Yeah.
do have one thing. Today at our office, a 19-year-old young man came in. First time we've ever seen him in our office. And he came in and he goes, "Yay, we won." I said, "Yes." And, we're talking a little bit. He was excited about it. I said, "Can I ask you how old you are?" Because I had no idea. He says, "I'm 19 and I voted for the first time in my life." I said, "Fabulous, fabulous." And so we got talking about politics a bit. And I told him, "We need you. We need the youth." And he says, "Well, how come more youth aren't involved?" And I said, "Well, they're going to school, they're raising families, they're, working two or three jobs, and they don't have time. But it is about priority. And I welcome you to." So he gave me his information, and I'll get him plugged in with us. But it is about the priorities that people set in their life, and we do need youth um, everywhere, and we do need to welcome those in that, we're never going to agree, all of us. I'm Republican. I've been Republican a long time. I cannot say I've been one forever because I haven't. But it's about picking the party that aligns with your values the most. That's what it's about. And
And then making sure that that party's effective at
yes,
accomplishing those results.
yes,
Because, when we go to meetings and we just all agree with each other and then we go home, we don't do anything about it. We're really not living up to our own principles. Principles
yeah,
must live and affect the real world. And by the way, principles, conservatism, and the Constitution must repeatedly be explained to every new generation as to
yes,
why it matters. It's the reason why Reagan said that freedom, liberty is always one generation away from extinction.
mhm,
It's because we have to take the trouble, we can't take it for granted, we have to take the trouble to explain to someone that this is why we have a Bill of Rights. This is why we have an electoral college. This is why we have these things. These things matter. They were well thought out, and we have to re explain it. We have to make it feel new and meaningful to every new generation, even though it's timeless and it's been around for a couple of hundred years, because it can be forgotten. And we unfortunately have people that are trying to radically transform this country and maybe damage it permanently, who are trying to stick things like the Constitution down a memory hole and call it racist.
yes,
We better explain it. Now, people are tired of being called racist. That certainly came through in this election.
yes,
Um, and so sometimes you can give somebody a butt whooping and send them back, to scurry back under the carpet, but they'll come back, and we've
mhm,
got to be ready for that. We've got to let young people know why this is important and meaningful and share it. The worst thing you can do is keep the reasons why we fight for this country and for freedom a secret.
yeah. And I want to address Nicholas's statement here of, we cannot, we can't travel to these meetings fiscally, but we can remote in and be involved. I will tell you, you must be in the room. You must be in the room to be effective at a meeting. You can sit on your computer and watch something, but you will not be effective like you are in the meeting. To get up and go to a microphone and speak to an issue, it is not the same as doing it remotely. And if it's financial help, if you are involved in your county party, then your county party should uh, should be able to help to get people to a meeting financially if they so need it. You know,
By
you
the way,
can't rely on that.
you can also participate in a county meeting, and it's a representative form of government. So if you don't have the time and the money to go to something, you can elect people that you see in person in the county and have them represent you. And then they are obligated, just like every form of representative government, to listen to you and solicit your input before they go back to the next state meeting. That's how it works. But you're right, Sonny. There's actually nothing quite like being there in person. And the one way you will be sure of it is when you go there in person. Um,
You know, and Nicholas might even be talking about a county meeting. So I will tell you, you know, when we have county meetings, we're talking political strategy. Not every single one, but we're talking political strategy. Our county does not hold Zoom meetings. And the reason is you cannot control where that information is going. When I have hold a meeting in person, and I know that I could talk freely to somebody in there, that it's not being recorded and sent out somewhere else. That's not how that works. And so if you can't get to a meeting, that's on you. It's one day a month. Make it a
yeah,
priority or not. You
and
know,
that's
I mean,
local, and that's local too.
and that
So
is local. It's
yeah,
local. You know, we do it once a month. It used to be every 3 months. You don't build an organization only getting together once every 3 months.
yeah. But I think there's levels of participation for everybody too.
There
It's like if you
is.
can't make it, maybe you donate to the people who are doing the work and make and give them the fuel they need too. That's another thing. There's something for everyone to do. I always have had that philosophy, and that's why the lesson from this last week is you can succeed, and then you can roll over and let it all slip away, and we mustn't do that. Ever vigilant is what we. That's the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, and we must demonstrate that starting this week.
Yep.
So anyway, I figure we've done it. We put in an extra long super show here tonight, Sonny, and it's been a pleasure being on with
Yeah.
you, sharing the news, but also sharing our reflections and thoughts on what we just saw transpire this week.
Yes.
And the path forward's clear, and I think both you and I have done this and lived this, and I think this is now our message to everyone out there. Share this message with everyone that you can,
Yes.
because this is something they need to hear.
Thank you, everybody. Good night, and share the message. Have a super weekend. We won.